We're hoping everyone is with us here today. We're having a little bit of trouble technology-wise, of course. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully everyone's here. First, we are welcoming Dr. Greg Coots from BHSU here, and he has worked at the university for 15 years. He's also been a previous special ed director and a special education teacher for the Sioux Falls school system. And then he also works as a school psychologist, and he has actually been involved in different phases of special ed, or actually since 1975. And then working most recently closely with the Department of Education, collecting data for going on for 7 years with that time. So we'll jump right into the presentation here.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Hopefully everybody can hear. I'm sure we'll get people calling in if they're not. Start off just by saying that indicator 14 is one of 20 indicators that, from my perspective, kind of drives special education.
Is that my phone work?
Yes.
Oh, okay. It's not. I'm not hearing anything. Oh, here I have.
Indicator 14 is one of 20 indicators that, in my estimation, kind of drive special education. And what indicator 14 is essentially trying to answer is, of the kids that have been on IEPs that are exiting the K-12 system, do we know if they are working or if they are going to some post-secondary education setting? South Dakota has been collecting this data for 7 years. We spent about a year developing the secure website with BIT here. Then we started collecting data on the 05, 06 exiters, and we are now just finishing up on the 011, 012. But for purposes of this presentation, we'll just kind of look at some of the things that we found from 05, 06 through 2010 and 11. This did not happen overnight, and it was not one or two people's job to put this together, but quite a list of people. And hopefully I've got most of them here. I see Melissa Floor is here, and she can correct me if I'm missing some people. But certainly the one person that I deal with most closely and for the longest period of time has been Melissa Floor in the Office of Special Education. But at the very beginning of this process, we worked with Mountain Plains Regional Resource Center, Wayne Ball at the time. Also worked at the National Post-School Outcomes at the University of Oregon, at first with Jane Falls and Mike Bullis, and now more recently Don Rowe and Dr. Charlotte Alberson. Also worked a little bit with Cinda Johnson, University of Washington, Seattle, and there were several South Dakota task force members that would meet every year to reconfigure what we're doing so that we make sure that we're asking the questions we want to ask and finding the information out that we want to find out. Certainly a key group here too, Debbie Lancaster and Dino Brooks from BIT. They've just been invaluable. Basically, I would say collectively these individuals have helped and created, a process by which we can collect this data. We have two separate approaches that we use here. We refer to them as Appendix A and Appendix B. Appendix A is information that school districts provide into the secured website. The information that includes, are the following. Obviously, the child's name, their address, their date of birth, telephone number, cell number, and those are critical for contacting individuals. Generally, school districts are really good at getting phone numbers in. In fact, I think last year, we had 98% phone numbers that were listed. Now, when it comes to actually calling those numbers a year after individuals exit the K-12 system, which is when we collect data 1 year after they've exited, we're noticing about 20% of those numbers that were correct are current when they were entered into the secured website have changed. And so by virtue of that, we're losing some of those people being able to contact them. But then also other things that the districts will enter will be things like their exit status, whether they were regular diploma, whether they aged out, whether they graduated with a some other diploma, or if they dropped out. They also enter in gender, they enter in race, ethnicity, enter in primary disabling condition. They also enter in what does the school or the student anticipate is going to happen once they exit. Are they going to go to the university, or are they going to work? And then also we find out what linkages with adult services that students were involved with during high school. Voc rehab, the division of developmental disabilities, and so forth. We collect data from the schools that suggest whether or not the individuals were English language learners. We also are looking, we're trying to find out if students participated during their high school career in Project Skills, Youth Leadership Forum, Catch the Wave, self-advocacy training. Later in this presentation, you will see that we've run some odds ratios to see the relationship between participation in those programs and if that had any impact on them being engaged either in employment or post-secondary education. And there is a correlation there. There is a correlation. Won't suggest causation, but I will say there's correlation there, okay? And then in the schools also indicate in the last year of high school, did the student work in any of the following? For example, as a volunteer, work experience, work study, and so forth. And that's the information that the school districts provide when the students exit. Like I said, about a year after that, beginning April 1st through September 30, we will take those individuals' phone numbers, and then we will start calling each one of them. We proceed that by sending out a mailing to every single student saying, if you want to respond to this survey and don't want to be called, simply fill out the survey that we provide here, send it in, and we'll take you off the list. And what we have found is we get about a 10% response rate with the mailings, okay? So then we also have, like I said, we will contact people via phone. We may call 10, 15 times, to make sure we get a hold of them. In addition, we found through, again, I've got a slide in here, kind of a reversal design we looked at, that if we have participation with our special education directors in their actual school districts, if they're involved in this, we find that we get a more representative sampling of those individuals that are exiting than if we do not involve the SPED directors. So at one task force meeting, I think it was the second one, the task force members suggested that perhaps we start utilizing some SPED directors. And what that has done for us, again, it's given us more of a representative sampling of the population in South Dakota. And when we are contacting people to fill out the survey, some of the things we want to find out is, if at any time during their high school career, if they had attended any type of school, job training, or education program. Then another thing we find out is, did you complete one term, at least one term? Then we want to find out if they were part-time or full-time status, and then we want to know the type of school. Was it a university, vocational technical, military, vocational training, those types of things. And those are the things that we find out from the student to see what they are doing. If they weren't working or going to school, one of the things we like to find out is, why aren't you working or going to school? And so we will ask them questions, was it you weren't prepared to go, those kinds of things, so we can collect that out of there. Then we also ask if they've had any contact with any adult service agency, again, such as Voc rehab or developmental disabilities. The second part of the survey deals with employment. We find out if in the last year they have been employed at all, yes or no. And we want to find out the type of employment, competitive employment, family member's business, sheltered employment, whatever it might be. And then we also find out, and this is kind of a change from the original way we collected data, we want to find out if they've worked at least a total of 3 months or about 90 days, and if they worked at least 20 hours a week, and if they were paid at least minimum wage. And then we just aggregate that out so that we find out if people are working less than 10 hours, 10 to 19 hours, 20 to 29 hours, 30 to 39 hours, or more than 40 hours per week. Likewise, we look at whether they worked less than a month, 1 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, 12 9 to 12 months or more than 12 months. Find out if that's been the only employer that they've had. And the wage amount, we ask them that. Not, we don't always get responses on all of these things, but we get enough responses to be able to extrapolate that data to get kind of an idea of what kids are probably making here. Then we find out, are you living with your family? Are you covered by your family's health insurance? Or are you covered by any other insurance? And all of this information then goes into this secured website, and then we can spit that out into an Excel spreadsheet, and then we can start dealing with the numbers and trying to put all that together. And that's kind of the process that happens. Again, this is somewhat redundant here, but Appendix A, you can see what is included in that, and again, school districts fill that out. Appendix B, you can see what is filled out there. Down on the bottom there, generally speaking, we're collecting data on approximately 50 to 60% of all Exeters. This year, I think we're going to be closer to 65% of all Exeters that we're going to collect data on. When we have phone numbers that are operational, we have response rates about 70%. This year it's going to be around 75%, which is really, really astounding, I think. Nationwide, the median response rate is like 46.8%, I think, so we're above that. But there's a wide range, too, like from 4% to 92% or some such thing. It's crazy. The PowerPoint that I'm going to do is going to talk about the gender of the Exeters, ethnicity, engagement rates, employment, education trends. You can read down there, wages per hour. I think right at the bottom there you'll see, and I kind of refer to these as the money slides in my estimation, because we've looked at Catch the Wave, Youth Leadership Forum, Self-Advocacy Project Skills, and tried to see if there's any relationship between those four and being engaged, and we are indeed seeing some correlation, like I said before. We also have done what is called some multiple linear regression, and we're taking a look at independent variables or stuff. We're looking at these 4 or 5 things and seeing if that has any impact on, say, competitive employment. And that's more inferential and not so correlational, because then we can almost predict that if we're doing these 4 or 5 things, this, it's highly likely this is going to be the outcome over here. If we don't do those 4 things and we do something lesser than this is going to be the outcome over here. And that's, multiple linear regression is just a fancy name for looking at stuff to see if it's doing a job. Okay. And, I'll get to that a little bit later. Again, indicator 14 is very unique, I feel. The other 19 indicators really kind of deal with process, procedure, what's happening while a student is in the K-12 system. Indicator 14 is unique because it's trying to find out what the kid's doing after they've left the K-12 system, and I think that's it's one distinguishing characteristic. I'm going to go to the original definition. This is what we used in collecting data in 2005, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8. This is the way we did it. And in 8, 9, it changed a little bit. It became more refined. But originally, we were looking at whether or not individuals were employed only, whether or not individuals were going to post-secondary settings only, or if they were post-secondary and employment only, okay? We didn't look at things like they had been in post-secondary education for at least 3 months, like we require now, and they had been at a university, in order to code them off that way. We just looked at whether or not they had been engaged in some kind of employment only, post-secondary only, and post-secondary and employment only. And here's kind of what we found. If you look way to the right there, we've got engagement rates, and you see the 3 years there, 2005, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8. You can see the number of individuals that we were able to contact. It's a pretty large N. And you can see we had, like in 2005, 6, we had approximately 7% that were post-secondary only. We had 46% that were employment only, and then 31% were post-secondary and employment only. So the total engagement rate there that particular year was 84%. And then the following year, of course, it was 10%, post-secondary only, 43%, employment only, and then the two combined, it was about 28%. And again, you can see the engagement rates there were right at that 80% level for those 3 years. What I did is I took the 2008-9 year when we changed the definition of whether or not individuals were competitively employed or going to post-secondary education. And I just tried to extrapolate that data to see, had we been measuring it the way we had years before, how they would have matched up to the 3 previous years. And you can see there almost 89% of the individuals that year, 08-09, were engaged in some kind of employment or post-secondary education. And this is just kind of some trend lines, pretty much the same kind of information that I just showed in the previous slide. Also, it was I think 2006-07. That's when we had 7 ESAs. I pulled out all the information from the different ESAs to see if there was any variability. At that particular time, the engagement rate statewide was about 82%. And so, as you can see on this particular slide, ESAs 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7 all are at that average range or above, state average range or above, 92 and 94% in 3 and 4. You can see, though, in ESAs 5 and 6, substantially lower there for a number of reasons. And so those are some target areas without question. This represents the representativeness of our exiting group. I'll try to explain this. If you look way down at the bottom, look at difference. If you see red down there, we would suggest that's not good. And the reason that's not good is when we look at minority and dropout, essentially the first year that we did this, first year and the third year we did this, our minority and our dropout were elevated. And this was when we decided we probably need to get the sped directors involved. Now, the way this works is if you look at the target leaver totals, let's just look at overall, there's 504, and learning disabled, there were 294. If you divide 294 by 504, you get 58.33%. So in other words, of the total leavers, 58% were considered to be learning disabled. Now, the response totals, if you look at that, the overall, there was 239. We were able to harvest 139 and 239 for a 58.16% rate. So what we can say is that is within that plus or minus 3% area. And so the LD this year were pretty representative. We can say the same thing with the ED. 1.35%, off a little bit. Now, excuse me for the MR. I don't know how to change MR in this NPSO program. It should be CD, so I hope I haven't offended anybody, but that's just, I'm unable to change that. But you can see with the CD there, we were right on target. All other disabling conditions, AO, 86%, female within 1%, English language learner within under 1%, but again, the dropout minority, we were off, 4 or 5%. So what I would probably conclude from this is while the engagement rate in 2007-8 might have seemed a little elevated, probably that was artificially elevated because we didn't really have a representative sample. If we would have had a representative sample, that engagement rate more than likely would have dropped a little bit. And that's why representative sampling is critical. Now, compare that to the 2006-07 exiters, the year before. You look at the bottom, and everything is black down there. We've got under a percent difference, 1.63% difference, 2%, 2.13, 0.31% difference, 0.66. And the question becomes, well, why is that? And this is the reason right here. It was an ABA design. It was a reversal design. In the first year, 2005-06, we did not include special education directors in this process. Okay, if only sent mailings out, we only did phone calls. And you can see, again, just like the previous slides, we were less 7.72% minority and less 6.41% dropout. We were off that far from that 3%, so we probably needed 20 or 30 more in each one of those categories to be representative, to be within that plus or minus 3%. Now look at the B down there at the bottom, where you see the black numbers, the 2.13% minority, 0.66 dropout. The second blue line indicates intervention, and that intervention there was utilizing SPED directors. And when we utilized SPED directors, we were within that plus or minus 3%. So to find out if that really held true, the next year we did not contact SPED directors to see if it went back to baseline, which indeed it did. It went back up to 8.5%, 8.59%, and 6.44%. We want to be within that plus or minus 3%. So then to see if the SPED directors had an impact, that fourth year, we engaged them again, and sure enough, it came back down to where it was. So we're pretty confident that having SPED directors involved in this process is going to keep that representativeness of our harvested data very close to the population of all experts, so that it's more reliable, more valid. This is the current definition for indicator 14. Essentially, most all of the same data is collected, but it's just reported out differently. Okay, again, we're looking at enrolled in higher education within 1 year of leaving high school, enrolled in higher education or competitively employed within high school, and then C is enrolled in higher education, post-secondary education or training, competitively employed, or in some other employment. C really would indicate what our response or our engagement rate would totally be. These are the definitions of those tiers. To be in higher education, they have to answer, yes, we have been enrolled in post-secondary education, yes, we completed at least one term, and yes, it was either a 4-year college or a 2 to 4-year college. Okay, and if they can answer yes to all of those, they fit into that tier 1. And this is non-duplicated. So once they fit into tier 1, they can't fit into tier 2, 3, or 4. Okay? They can only fit into that tier. So those higher education people are taken out. So they may be working and going to higher ed, but higher ed trumps everything else. Okay? Does that make sense? Higher ed trumps everything. Then we take a look at competitive employment, and to be competitively employed, they have to be able to answer yes to that they work for pay, yes, they work for at least 3 months, and yes, they worked an average of 20 hours or more, and yes, they were paid at least minimum wage. Other education, and by the way, higher education competitive employment probably will constitute, I think we had 77% last year. I think they were like 63%. So that's where the bulk of our people are engaged in this state. Other education, other education, ever enrolled in post-secondary education, yes. Completed 1 term, yes. School type, you can see those there, job, work, everything else. It did not appear in tier 1 or 2. Other employment, work for pay, yes, and have to work for at least 3 months. Now, when we first started doing this, if you were just working, they would have been counted as engaged. But now, no, we want you to work at least 3 months, or 3 months and at least 20 hours. So there's more conditions on this now. Now, here's the response rate for last year. You can see they're all in pretty good shape, except for minority. It's 3.51%. I did the numbers on this, and I think we had to collect another 2 surveys from minorities to make that under 3%. So my point being, it's pretty darn close. We're pretty confident where we're at here. Might be off a little, but it's off just decimal points. And again, this is using SPED directors. So we're feeling really confident about that. This again kind of prints out what happened with measurement A, measurement A being higher education, measurement B being higher education and employment. You can see 63%. Then measurement C being higher education, competitive employment, some other education, and some other employment. In other words, our engagement rate for 2010-11 was 77%. Conversely, that means there were 23% of our kids, 79 kids, that we could not code off as being engaged. Again, this kind of breaks it down by each one of the tiers. You can see 10% in higher education. Competitive employment was 53%. Add those two together, you get 63%. And then enrolled in other post-secondary education, 6%. Some other employment, 8%. Those added together add up to 77%. We disaggregate this now by type of exit. Here, this particular slide here, we're looking at individuals that graduated with a high school diploma, certificate, aged out, or dropped out. If you'll note the stat graphs there, they're different colors. Let's just take a look at statewide responses. The black down there represents enrolled in higher education. The gray above it represents competitive employment. The lighter gray above that enrolled in other post-secondary education or training, and then the stripes at the top would be some other employment. The white at the top is the non-engaged. Those are the people that are not doing anything according to the definitions. And you can see that our high school diploma exiters very closely approximate statewide respondents' average, which you would anticipate. But look over at the dropout, for example. The dropouts are almost 50% unengaged. It's kind of a recipe for disaster, obviously. That's nothing we didn't know. This is respondents by type of disability. Again, same thing on the color coding on the different bars. The dark or the black at the bottom is enrolled in higher education. The darker gray is competitively employed. 3, employed in some other post-secondary educational training. And then in 4, some other employment. And then the white at the top is disengaged, not doing anything, not engaged. You can see SLD, 15% not engaged. Again, I part the mental retardation, but cognitive disability, almost 40%. So they are less likely to be engaged 1 year after exiting the K-12 system than other disabling conditions. ED didn't fare much better as well, 36% unengagement there. Okay, this is by ethnicity, and this is, I think also telling. You can see way over to the left, statewide response, and then we've got Caucasian next, 18% not engaged. Obviously, Black or African American and Asian, we did not have enough individuals to report. Same way with Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islanders, 2 or more races, we just didn't have enough. But look at American Indian, Native American, you can see they're 44% unengaged there. But I think one of the bright spots is if you look at higher education, they actually had 13% of their population with an N of 45 that were in higher education, actually greater than Caucasian at 10%, which is interesting. This is by gender, and again, we found some differences here as well. Male, female, engagement versus non-engagement. Males are not engaged about 18% of the time, or engaged 82% of the time, another way to say it. Females, on the other hand, are not engaged 33%, engaged 67%, quite a jump. Competitive employment, 17% lagging behind the males. In South Dakota, this is how we determined this. Last year, there were 339 respondents. 35 of those respondents were enrolled in higher education, or 10.32%. 180, or 53.1%, were in competitive employment. 20 in some other post-secondary, 5.9%. 25 were engaged in some other employment, 7.4%. This is how we come up with the 77%. Down at the bottom, I've made note, there were 79 exiters that were in Tier 5 or not engaged. However, 17 of those had worked, not for the required 3 months, so we couldn't count them. But they were working. But by definition, we couldn't count them. It just drives me insane, but you can't do it. And 23 had gone to school but hadn't finished a term. Now, why do I bring this up? Had we been under the older rules, where it was employment only, post-secondary only, or post-secondary and employment only, those, those 40 students out of the 79, or 50% of those students there, that comprise 24% of the population.
Alarm? Yes. Oh, we have a fire alarm.
I guess we have a fire alarm.
In our building right now. So I suppose we'll pause our meeting for a moment.
Well, this is new.
Or a
Break time, that's right.
Maybe there's a message.
Sorry about that. We'll be back.
That's what I needed to do.
Wow.
Burning.
Yeah.
Like, get a bathroom break.
Well, I guess we'll just go back in a minute.
Fire alarms aren't really that important, so it's okay.
I'm not really sure, but I'm getting a lot done.
I'm making to-do lists. I have a to-do list for today. I could work on that. So I wish I would have brought my computer to work on. I'm catching up on CNN, actually. I kind of wish I would have brought my computer too. But then I would have been messing around with it. Linda did leave. I have a social worker coming right after this. I'm going to have to call parent, and I'm not ready for it.
Some trail mix or some grapes.
No, good thanks.
I could go get Melvin's autograph. You know, because he understands the Social Security paperwork.
Hey,
I read it.
Can we
When I had to
discharge
sign
with
it.
one chart? And he goes, "What? Have you done any discharges with one chart?"
I was like,
But you don't
have to get
signature
it.
page.
so
You put it on
that's,
there. Why don't we just scan the discharge signature page into one chart? Because everything, all of the discharge stuff is on one chart, so why would we put a signature page on there?
like for the meeting, I thought the
Yeah.
same thing.
I write meeting minutes.
Yeah, I write meeting minutes too.
For your discharges?
Yeah,
I write meeting minutes for my discharges.
I do.
I'm not going to start.
No,
You what?
know it. Yeah, because you have the discharge summaries.
The discharge summary is the meeting minutes, and then in your post recommendations, that's where I put my meeting minutes.
I think I
I
knew
didn't write
this.
many
I don't do that.
I haven't done a discharge in a long time, so my opinion is
I
useless.
think you did know that.
Yeah, I probably.
Well, I
Hey,
probably did it
Sheree,
wrong,
you should
but
know
I
that.
didn't do many minutes.
You did it. You put them in the post recommendations.
Yeah, I just.
Trey, you should start doing
I
that.
don't even know when my last discharge
like the way I
was.
do
Come
it.
to think
I
of it.
don't.
Last DSY, I suppose.
Do I have time to
But
get
it-
this autograph?
Oh, no.
Somebody's not on mute out there.
That's probably us.
Should we put ourselves
Did you hear us?
Yeah, I think it's you.
Okay.
Well, we'll figure it out.
We don't know how to mute.
Just now. Yeah, so there's,
No talking.
yeah, no more talking.
Go talk, Chris. Okay.
I knew they were. And I knew that they were very sensitive. Because Kristen said it.
Or maybe I'm muting them and not muting us. Can you still hear us?
Why are you guys talking
Oh,
to us?
sure. Because we weren't muted.
I think
And they notified us of it.
can still hear us. They're just muted, so they can't tell us.
Yeah, but they didn't say anything.
Ask them to wait if they can hear us. Well, they probably heard that if they.
They probably would have.
Okay.
Were you guys saying naughty things?
Yeah. You were. We were talking about how we know how to do discharge.
So you know how to do what?
Yeah, it looks like the music didn't work for them either. Either way.
Did it work? We should ask Kristen. Chris, all right.
Overhead page and Danny.
Probably. I don't have Chris is really busy getting meeting.
I'm gonna go get some coffee.
Okay. I should do that too.
Or water.
need coffee.
What's that?
Are you excited for that?
I am.
Did you see the last night?
Yeah, I'm watching.
I don't know.
That was the first thing on there.
You know what? I think you're going, but
Oh, I didn't.
I'm scared.
Confidential, serious thing.
Well, maybe she can.
Try, but but we decided that currently we're here. So we should shape it more. So we have to put in self controls to keep it in this range.
Get rid of friends so that once they're all married,
Then knock it back just a little bit, and then it doesn't get out of hand. That's where we're at. Especially since
I'm only gonna be friends with people that are married.
right.
I don't understand. Think of funny. I've had 7 this summer, which means I've had every weekend.
What about we friends
with people that aren't planning on getting married first? Well, that's what I thought, but random ones are coming up. But no,
I told you the solution is right above.
I know.
I wrote it a big sign and said no.
She's trying to teach me no.
I was just talking to someone about this morning. I need to learn how to say no. I'm terrible.
Oh yeah. Ever since the last, it started like the 3rd weekend of May, and it's every weekend until the 3rd weekend of October. I'm away from it. And none of them are here, of course.
Right.
Of course.
No. Travel for all of them.
So I just got the itinerary for one of them.
I have 5 requests for Minden pumpkins this morning. 5.
Thank goodness I get to miss that.
Stop it! I learned to say no.
Okay, can you fix my keyboard?
Can they hear us? I still can. It makes me very.
Why do people ask for them?
What?
I know they were cool, but
Oh, I don't mind it when people ask. I just the issue comes up when they want to say. Well, that because usually I want to like practice different ones, and so I have to learn to say no. Like I have my friends and
everyone else can hear our
that I
conversation.
want to make pumpkins with.
Yeah, can we
And I have a list already. I started in like August.
You show us how
These
to
are the
unheal
pumpkins I need to do, and they're all my coworkers, and they're all my family, and they're like my parents or whatever.
Everyone else can hear our conversation.
And then inevitably when the season starts going, our friends are like, hey, can you make me this one? And then about 2 more minutes.
All right, we're back.
What do I do?
Well, that's what I did when I saw it laying there.
Yeah.
Say thanks and move on, I guess.
South Dakota government back up and running.
Had a breath of fresh air. Thank you all for hanging on there. We'll jump back in.
Yeah, and again, had we been measuring employment, post-secondary education like we had the first 3 years, we'd have close to 90% engagement rate this year. Again, this is just another way to envision or visualize how this works. A is higher education, B is 1 and 2, and C is 1, 2, and 3, and 4. This slide here shows some improvements, slippage per tier. As you can see, 2008, 9 through 10, 11, the 3 years that we've collected data the new way. You can see in 08, 09, the first year there, we had almost 15% kids involved in higher education or university, or at least a 2-year program. And then that dropped almost in half the next year. Now it's about 10%. Be interesting to see what it is this year. On the bright side, competitive employment bounced up from 45% to 53%.
Okay, I want you to
other-
stop writing. I want you to take 5 minutes and go back through and check your work. Okay? No run-on sentences.
I think we might have gotten mixed up with another
Get your
DDN line.
capitalization right. Make sure you're not starting a sentence with any of the fans.
Is there a class that can hear us at all? We can hear you.
Look at prepositions.
An English class?
So I want everyone reading their journal.
Oh my goodness.
Corrections that you need to do the all news.
Okay, mute audience.
Okay.
Okay.
So maybe I'm speaking to an English class now. Okay. But again, total engagement in these 3 years has been roughly the same, 78%. In 2008-9, did drop a little bit, 76.7% last year. Here's just an example of some engagement rates and wage differences between Native American and Caucasian. In about the middle, of course, we don't have large ends here for Native American, but we can see the dollars per hour, $8.25, $6.87, $8, $5.15. This, I think, was like from the first year we collected data, 05, 06. Compared that to Caucasian, where we're like $8.90, $9.20, $10, $10, $9. There's, sizable difference there, in my opinion, as well as engagement rates per ESA. I spoke a little bit about odds ratio before. We looked at, just trying to measure the effect size of the association between Youth Leadership Forum, Catch the Wave, self-advocacy, and project skills, and being engaged. And here's, in 06, 07, we had people participating in Catch the Wave, Youth Leadership Forum, self-advocacy, or project skills. Then you see 129 were engaged, 24 not engaged. Then we had people that did not participate in Catch the Wave, Youth Leadership Forum, self-advocacy. And you can see the number engaged is 98, the number not engaged is 27. And we want to see if there's any difference there. And so in order to do that, you can see the math. So we have an odds ratio of 1.48. What this means is that individuals engaged in Catch the Wave, Youth Leadership Forum, self-advocacy, or project skills in 2006-07 were about 1.48 times as likely to be engaged. Engaged meaning either going to school or being employed. We've done this now for 3 years, and we have an overall N of 882, and we're seeing these same trends just about every year. Overall, kids that are engaged in this are about 1.64 times as likely to be engaged once they exit the K-12 system than if they are not engaged. And you can see the differences in the years. 06, 07, they were 1.48. 07, 08, almost 1.5. And then 08, 09, almost twice as likely to be engaged. So there's a correlation here. There's a correlation, but we can't really say there's a causation, but this is positive. Okay, this is positive. If somebody was going to decide whether or not to be engaged in these four activities or not engaged, they're probably better off to be engaged, and there seems to be a correlation. This here, though, is where I think the rubber really kind of hits the road, because now we're almost looking at some inferential stuff. And you'll see in the top, I've got the independent variables of project skills, 3 or more months being employed, and 20 or more hours per week. Our effect size, that's that little ES in the parentheses, is considered large. anything over a 0.5 using this would be considered large. And here you can see almost 70, 0.75 effect size. When the R is squared, we get 0.56. And what that is saying, our dependent variable here is competitive employment. Our independent variables are project skills, 3+ months employed, 20+ hours a week employed. And we can see that accounts for about 56%, 0.56% of the variance of being competitively employed, okay? So in other words, that's a very large impact. Now, conversely, I can say, well, there's 43% out there that we don't know what is impacting this, okay? But we do know 56%. And so this is good stuff to be doing. Now, contrast that with the with the lower brackets here. We're still looking at working, we're still looking at project skills, but here we're looking at less than 20 hours a week and less than 3 months. So if kids had worked less than 3 months, less than 20 hours, and engaged in project skills, there was a small effect size, and it only accounted for 6.7% of the variance of competitive employment. So in other words, being employed 20+ hours or more, being in project skills, being employed 3+ months, gives these kids almost a 50% additional variance or 50% better chance of being competitively employed than if they were working less time and less hours. Okay, and that's all that says.
What you're going to do today is peer review each other's outlines. Okay? Now,
this is just an example of effect size, what it really means. See, I'm just using direct
on
instruction.
everything, you're not helping. Okay? Now, you don't want to write horrible, awful, dumb. That's not helping either. Okay? What you want to do is look at.
I guess I'm just pausing here for a minute. We've got
their
some
supporting
competition
paragraph, okay, or body number 1 topic. Okay, look at that topic. Then look at each of the supporting details and elaboration. Does A support this topic? Does B support this topic? Does C support it? Do all of these elaborations explain or give examples or details for A? These for B. These for C. If there's an example here that should be up here, then you need to write a little note. Maybe it's better under A. Okay? If it doesn't support or it doesn't make sense, or maybe you're not sure, they need to add more information, those are comments you can write on the side. Okay? If you think it's a really good point, that's great. Go ahead and put that there. Or interesting, I can't wait to read more. That's fine. Put that there. But don't write good for everything, because you want to help your classmate improve, get a better grade, right? To give them some help. You want to receive. It's nice. Oh, good. It's wonderful. But if it's not good, or it can be better, you want to know. Okay? So this is what every outline needs to have. Okay? Which shouldn't be hard because I gave you the template. So there needs to be a topic here. Each of these needs to have support. They can have 2 or 3. If they have more, that's fine. Okay? Again, these aren't going to be complete sentences, so don't worry about that. You'll go through one, complete one. Take your time, really read them. If we have time, then we can switch and go through another one. What I also want you to do at the top, after you read it, at the top, put what you think is their main idea. Did they choose classroom? outside or both. So when you get your paper back, if it just says classroom, but you're writing about both, maybe you need to change something. Okay? Does everybody understand what I'm looking for? If you have questions, ask. Now, you don't get to do your own. There's no names on here, so you have to tell me. Is that yours? Is that yours? Is that yours? Is that yours? Okay, good deal. Turkey, grab your stuff and come in.
All myself.
All your stuff. So, you can begin.
I can comment on the.
Yep, you could write comments on there. Pencil or pen, whichever one you want. Don't write all over too much so they can still see. Yeah, if you need to use a translator for some, yeah, that's fine for this.
Yeah, I would say, ask everyone just to say, unmute and tell them that you're still, that they're still connected.
Yeah, we got all 3 slides.
Okay. So
You should be able to.
All right.
Yep.
Sorry, everybody, again, for our technical difficulties. We just want to make sure, hopefully everyone can hear us. If you could unmute momentarily, and then I'll do a quick roll call, and then we'll continue on. Hopefully we can still have a pretty good rest of our meeting here. So, Aberdeen, are anyone there from Aberdeen?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Anyone from Chamberlain?
Yes, we're here.
Okay, great. Brookings?
I unmuted.
Anyone from Madison? Mitchell?
Yes, I'm here.
Anyone from Rapids?
Here.
Okay.
Rapids here.
All right, Vermilion?
Yep.
And then with Huron. Who's here? Anyone from Sioux Falls?
Yeah.
Sioux Falls is here.
Watertown?
Watertown's here.
Coverage Winter? And then CCHS?
Yep, we're here.
All right, thank you all again, and we will continue. So let's go back on mute and carry on and jump forward here.
I'm nearly done. This slide here, I had mentioned effect size earlier, and this slide here kind of demonstrates what effect size looks like. I'm just using direct instruction, a curricular approach to teaching students with disabilities as my example here. If we take a control group over here, and out of this control group, we pull this experimental group and provide them with direct instruction, the research has shown that it probably has the effect size of about 1.0, roughly, if you look at math and both reading. And here's how that's determined. We will take the mean scores of the experimental group, that's these scores right here, and from that we will subtract the mean of the control group, and we will divide that by the standard deviation. So what, just using these numbers here, let's say the mean of the experimental group was 65, and the mean of the control group was 50, and the standard deviation was 15, or that would include 34% of the population. We would have an effect size of 1. And essentially what that means by intervening with this particular process here, we literally take these kids and move them ahead. When we're talking about curricular issues, an effect size of 1.0 is very similar to one grade equivalency. And that's the only reason I wanted to show that, just so there was a visual representation in your mind of what an effect size was. Here you can see, again, here's some effect sizes of different evidence-based secondary transition practices and predictors. This was put out by National Secondary Transition Technical Assistance Center out of North Carolina. And I pulled these out. You can see the effect sizes that I pulled out are all large. They're all over 0.5. The p-value, in other words, it didn't happen just by chance, are all about 0.01, 0.05, very strong there. In other words, now, I'm not going to go into what all this means, but abbreviated, student satisfaction in terms of post-secondary outcome and education had a very large effect size. So if the student was satisfied, instruction received had a huge impact on education. Transition planning, huge impact on education. Internship completion, employment, post-internship job offer, employment, and so forth. Year-round job, education, and employment. The reason I bring this up is because, a couple slides earlier we had looked at 20-plus hours and 3 months or more and project skills and saw that really had, a large effect size on the outcome of competitive employment. Some of our thoughts are, if we could start collecting more data on independent variables very similar to this and plug that into our current approach, we would not only have those independent variables, but a variety of other ones, and we might be able to cumulatively, instead of having 56% of the variance identified, we might be able to get 80% of the variance. I'm just making that up, but with more of these that are evidence-based, if we could collect that data and then run the numbers, we could really have some powerful information to convey to school districts and to others, I would suppose, using a similar process on what really works for individuals going on to school or being employed. Again, this is just a party thoughts. I looked, this might be a year or two old, but I think South Dakota, we spend about $160 million a year on special education. I think it's probably a little north of that now. We've been doing this for 40 years, so literally, we've spent billions of dollars in the state of South Dakota in the 40 years since Public Law 94-142, or almost 40 years since PL 94-142 was passed. And really, up until about 7 years ago, we didn't know the outcome. We now know the outcome of South Dakota's kids that were on IEPs, and it's pretty positive. We certainly are above the national median in terms of engagement rates, and so it's just a way of us being able to document and verify and be accountable for the money we are spending to see if we are getting the biggest bang for the buck. And if we could look at some of those independent variables and maybe measure those, we might even get more bang for the buck and give us more direction. Just something to think about. And again, we also know, like I said, those independent variables, we know some of them that seem to have impact, and I certainly think we need to continue looking at those. National Post-School Outcomes Abstract states the following. They're trying to help states improve efficiency, cost effectiveness, have valid, reliable, accurate data, strengthen accountability, and so forth. And I really firmly believe that South Dakota is doing this and is going to continue to do this, and will do it even better in the years to come. So I thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing the information. It's really interesting, especially as we work forward with our work plan, which we're going to talk about here shortly, and then that focus on transition. So,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, then right now, Angie is going to do a presentation. Let's see. That's not the right camera. Let's try camera 2.
I think that's your English class.
I know, right?
They don't look very happy, it must be.
That actually does still look like that's our English class. Oh my goodness. Well, while I work on that, do you, Angie, want to share a little bit about the Office of Community Living? I'll grab your zip drive and then I'll step out one point here. Which one is that?
We think that's the English class. We think that's the English class that we used to be hearing.
Oh, your piece of words.
Oh, I think they finally see us there. Wave.
Yeah, you guys have to wave, because I can wave, but they don't see me.
You guys have to wave back at them.
Yeah,
Look at her. They're just like, whoa, what's going on?
A little clear cap.
What do you want?
A little clear cap.
Oh, I don't know.
I might have lost it. Okay. Do you want to? Maybe we'll
Well, they just showed the same focus there.
back over to PCs
They tested it
and then
everywhere.
we get them away. All right.
I might have to get them.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Good seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gooch. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Okay, this is Angie Boddicker. This is one of the most unique DDNs I've ever been on. All sorts of strange things are happening. I am part of the newly formed Office of Community Living. Just a little background on how this got formed. The Department of Human Services lobbied to get us some money last year, and the legislature awarded the DDD funds to approve the hiring of 2 new positions. So we have now, Kelly Anderson and myself are the new Office of Community Living. We were just established in July of 2013. So we're very new. We're figuring out our positions and coming up with goals and objectives that we're going to be working on. The purpose of our office is, I'll read what our official purpose is, and then I'll be explaining some of our actual duties that we're going to be doing. The purpose is to establish a coordinated effort to assist people with disabilities with transition from life in institutional settings, as well as to provide ongoing community supports for people to fully access life in home and community-based settings. We want to make changes at systemic levels across the state, which means that the Office of Community Living wants to make participants active in their community, to have housing options and support services that meet the needs of everyone. Our other goal is to educate the public to eliminate discrimination that prevents reaching their full potential. One of the best examples that my boss, Dan Lusk, gives when he talks about the Office of Community Living is people that live in small towns that have grown up there their whole lives. The community knows them. They know the community. They're happy. All of a sudden, they're done with their educational services, and then they need to, if they want employment or something, to be living by themselves, they have to move to a place where there's a community support provider. So our goal is to make it an option for these people to be able to stay in their hometown. We'll be getting supports in the community for them to be able to stay with their family if that's what their wish is, to get their own apartment, to help them find a job in their community. We want them to be able to live where they want to live instead of having to move to some other town where they don't know anybody and people don't know them. So that's, the overall goal is to try and make the communities have more options for people to stay in there where they want to live. Kelly and I have different job duties. Mine is going to be working more with transition and case management. So, like I talked about, having control of over your own life, developing places in your community that you can live and have employment if that's where you wish to live. One of the other areas that I'll be working with is with students working towards adult services. So this means that we're going to be trying to getting into schools and educating parents and teachers and students about what their options are earlier on in their education. One big project that we are working on right now is we're developing some information that we're going to be getting out to parents and letting them know all the different options that are available. So with the Employment Task Force, we are really trying to make employment be something that students are really thinking about instead of, oh, I'm going to go and live somewhere and not have to work. We want everyone to be employed if that's what is that's what they want and if that's what is available in their community. The other option is we're going to be working with shared living. So shared living might be living with a family member. It might be living with a roommate in an apartment, or living in their own home, or living in an apartment building with others with disabilities. So we need to make more opportunities available for those people. We want them to be able to have independent living services in their home community, so they have the freedom and the opportunities to have relationships with their family, friends, and neighbors where they are living. One thing we are going to be doing is sending out surveys to find out what options people want in their communities and see how we can improve those and how we will be able to promote programs in the communities so people are able to stay there. The other part of my job is going to be promotion of ongoing efforts for integrated competitive employment. And I know that some special ed teachers have been very creative over the years finding jobs for their students, so we want to continue on with that as these people are getting out of transition services into the adult services. So we need to make more opportunities available. That is going to be things that I will be working on. The other position that Kelly is in is the community capacity and infrastructure development. So she will be working with crisis interventions. So one of them, here's the example that we have used when we talk about this, is there are, when individuals get placed, when they're having behavioral issues and they get placed somewhere, some of these places don't know how to work with individuals with disabilities, and they don't want them there, or they won't accept them there. So we're trying to get something set up for crisis and behavior interventions. Another big area that Kelly will be working on is the autism population. Currently, there are several people with autism that don't meet the requirements due to their IQ, but they have other issues that are causing them not to be able to be employed or live someplace on their own. So she will be spending a lot of time developing some programs and options for people with autism. The other thing we're going to be working on is providing funding for community support providers to hire and develop qualified professional level staff to provide an agency resource for the people that they support. So we'll be working with SDDC in Redfield and working with those. I think there's about 140 people that are living there, and trying to find options for the people there to get jobs or apartments or whatever they want to be doing, to try and get them out into the community more instead of keeping them at SDDC. That is the short version of the new Office of Community Living. Are there any questions? Kelly and I have met with Dan and Carol Bruin, our assistant director, and we've been going over goals and objectives, and we're getting all those written up, and we're working on getting our name out into the state so everyone knows about us and is able to contact us. So you will be hearing about us a lot in the next year. If you have any questions, please contact the office, and they can send you to either Kelly or myself.
Grab the handout. It says State Employment Work Plan at the top, and it has the little red and blue triangles on it. We are going to follow through the next portion. And again, apologies for such a hectic thing. The first piece here really highlights the employment first alliance itself, and then
we can't hear you at all.
Oh, okay. I can do that. Sorry, does that help? Hopefully, as it went quiet then.
Much better, Ashley.
Great, thank you. Ultimately, with the employment work plan, the highlighted portion here, or I guess it's not highlighted on your version, but it says the vision that you all had set forth at a past meeting that I wasn't in on at all, but it just indicates that all people with intellectual and developmental disabilities have the opportunity to explore employment options that suit them best, and that includes education, experience, and exposure to make an informed decision about choosing a career path based on interests, strengths, and support needs. So, in utilizing that kind of vision, we pulled pieces from different directions that the division was already heading towards, and input from stakeholders, and then of course everyone's participation at the Cedar Shores meeting we had, I believe, back in July for the Employment First Alliance, which again, thank you all for attending that also. That was an interesting experience. We really learned a lot and got some really great feedback. So we'll kind of jump in then. It says page 2 of 9 at the bottom right corner. The first activity is to assess the benefits and fiscal